Welcome to Entrepreneurship with Daniel. I'm your host, Daniel Cueva, and here I have a special guest today. He's going to be talking to us about his e-commerce, his brand, and everything. Bradley Ryan.
Thank you. Welcome.
Bradley.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Very glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you for coming by.
Of course.
I know living in LA was constantly dealing with everyday life. Traffic and everything, but all of it is there to make us a little bit better.
I think so.
We get to meditate on the traffic.
That's
right. We get to listen to awesome podcasts, awesome music.
Yep. I find myself in traffic always going to like some sort of YouTube video where it's like Abraham Hicks or Joe Dispenza, so I always utilize that space in traffic because it's like, it's the inevitable. We can't get around sitting in traffic every day, so you might as well like do something good, a good use of your time,
Yeah, dude, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And it's interesting because earlier today I was actually with my audio engineer setting things up, and we were talking about, like I was gonna have you today, and I unplanned, one of the things that he was wondering actually was, he told me, he's like, hey, Daniel, can you ask him what motivated him to start his business? Because he's a spiritual guy. He does amazing work with not only audio engineering, but before we get into your stories, I would like us to take this time to answer his question, if we can. What motivated you to start your business? And you can start out by telling us what your business is, your brand, and just so everyone understands that.
Great. Okay, thank you. So my name is Bradley. My business is called Undercover. So I have a self-care brand, and I'm basically creating a conscious conversation through clean, nature-inspired products. So anything that I'm kind of called to work with in my own spiritual journey, whether that's skincare or it's candles or bath rituals, I'm creating that with a conscious and intentional space to kind of create a conversation for people to just be a little bit more intentional in their lives, or to give back to themselves in a way where they can kind of recalibrate to something that's a little bit higher minded, I guess you could say. But the reason I started my business was because I remember the day that I had the dream. I guess I can start there. I was not in a good place in my life. I didn't really have a lot of things going on. The job that I was working at was kind of slow, and it had been slow. So, I was kind of just showing up, and that was it. I wasn't really giving anything farther or going any deeper. And I was also in a very toxic relationship. And I had a conversation with myself in the bathroom, which I often do. And I was looking at myself and I said, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you want to do? What do you want to give? What do you want to create? What are you doing in this life? There has to be something more than what you're surrounded with right now, because this is not you. And in that moment, like, it kind of came to me like that. And I grabbed it, ran out of the bathroom, I grabbed a piece of paper, and I just flowed. Whatever came to mind, I wrote it down, whether it was products or ideas or people or marketing strategies. I just put it all on a piece of paper, front and back. And I still have that piece of paper to this day, which I always say, like, when I have huge offices, I'll have them like blown up and they'll be in there just to remind me of where it came from. But that really was the initial starting point, was kind of just asking myself, like, what am I doing with my life? Just waking up every day and going through the motions of life wasn't fulfilling. It didn't, I felt like there was a greater calling for myself, and I hadn't really found it yet. And to be in this, fast forward to where we are today, and like sitting here with you talking about my brand, I've never felt more fulfilled, and I've never felt more, I guess, at home of in what I'm doing or where I am in life. So it feels good. It feels really good.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
thank
amazing.
you.
Don't most actual good ideas start in the bathroom?
I think so. I mean, it's always my escape. I always say, like, if you can't find me, please check the bathroom first, because I have like locked myself in there for hours, and I'm either doing skincare or I'm in the bath or I'm just checked out and just like checking into myself. So
I see. I love that, man. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
I think um, it's so important nowadays to really build something from the heart,
yeah,
right? Because as you know, with e-commerce, there's so many products and everything that is getting sold out right now that with marketing strategies and everything, you can literally sell almost anything.
anything.
But for anything to really stick around and to really capture somebody, it really comes from the
Yeah.
story of why you started the company, the story of who you are. So I've been reading about you, and there's the what you call the beer journey and
Yeah,
being the undercover man.
yeah.
What's all this about, and how did you come up with the undercover as the name?
So Undercover is the name, and we'll get into this more, I'm sure, as we go into this conversation. But honestly, it was a place of alignment. It was a place of clarity. I had been racking my brain about the name. I had, you know, oh wow, I'm trying to figure out what I want to say because I have so many things to share with you right now. So when I first started, the products that I wanted to create initially were something completely different from where I am right now. And I'm always like, I'll go back there. Those will be a part of my line, kind of thing. But I was just going from where I could dream, and where I could settle into a place that felt good. It was always reaching for that place that felt right and didn't feel wobbly, didn't feel unclear, unsettling, but really felt like this is fun. If I'm going to create something, I want it to feel good. I think that's when we're in our highest space of creation, is when you feel good yourself in the doing of. And Undercover, I had kind of like tried to come up with names. I had kind of tried to, put different words together and have each letter stand for something, and it just wasn't making sense. And I remember one night I had closed my laptop and I had laid down for bed, and I was like writing in my notepad just like ideas of like where I wanted to pick up from the next morning. And I put my phone down, and I, no joke, it was like 2 minutes into me closing my eyes, I had started with something military based. It was something like camouflage. I was just running through ideas in my mind. And for some reason, the word undercover, like an agent, undercover, came to me. And when it popped in my head, I like opened my eyes like a movie or something. And I was like, that's it. This is it. It's undercover. And I like got my phone. I emailed the word undercover to myself, and I went to bed like so happy. And I was like, I woke up the next morning and I was like, I just uncovered like a huge part of my business, like the name. Now I can really hone in on what I'm doing. And so that's kind of where it came from. And oh, my beer journey.
Yeah.
So really, I think, as everything is in life, it's really about discovering ourselves. It's all self-discovery. And, kind of year to year, day to day, week to week, we kind of unfold in different ways, right? So, when I first started, had the idea, I was first growing my beard out, and it was always a topic of conversation. It was always like someone had something to say, like I didn't have a beard, and then all of a sudden I had a beard, and they're like, why are you doing this? I don't like it. You need to shave it. You need to trim it. And with every comment that I got from someone, I was like, it's so fascinating how much our external world tries to shape who we are, and it's so easy also to allow those comments to shape us. It would be very easy for me to succumb to those comments and say, oh, I should just shave my beard. Everyone's, talking about it, or all my friends are saying it, or my family's saying it, or whatever. And I was like, no, it instead empowered me to kind of like stay in my own power. And my beard always made me feel good. I love to like switch it up and shave it or grow it long, or trim it differently. And I know that sounds so funny, but like it really does allow me the space to physically feel different and more empowered, and more in my masculinity, more in myself, which was really fun to explore. I'm sure a lot of that kind of comes from being a gay man and being in the closet for so long. I didn't come out of the closet until I was like 21. So I'm sure a lot of that is still unlayering, even in my freedom of life that I live as of now. I'm sure there's some deep rooted issues of just like hiding or, cowering in the corner. But my beard always made me feel like a man or myself. It made me feel like I was able to choose me over anything that anyone else kind of said. So that was kind of the starting point of creating the products for my beard and sharing that story with empowering, kind of men and guys to do what makes you feel good. Like there's no rules in life of what we have to follow. There's pink is for girls, blue is for boys, those kinds of things that have always been so in my face. I just kind of wanted to blur all those lines and be like, none of that is real. Like there is a life and a depth of life that is so beyond this scope that we're even discussing when someone talks about what we physically look like. So I kind of wanted to just shake all that out and be like, empower people to just be you.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow, I love that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. And I love what you said. Oh, I love a lot of things what you said, and I want to pick out on each of that.
Yeah.
But I think the important part, one of the things that I picked out was the colors, right?
Yeah.
How we automatically think that even like pink is for girls.
Yeah.
Even like rainbow is supposed to be for gays. Like
that's it.
It's interesting because at one point I was like, but I like rainbows. Am I not allowed to wear it?
Right.
And interestingly enough, I have a shirt I'm gonna show you. Like I started wearing it. It's a shirt. I have this sweater, 2 sweaters, and a shirt with the same design. And the back is a rainbow. And that's why I'm like, I like rainbows.
Yeah.
Like
what's not to like, right?
Yeah. I love the colors, and it's like we should just do what feels right.
Right.
Without focusing on the labels making us different. We're human.
We're
here to enjoy and do everything with our lives, whatever we want. So I love that. So you spoke about feeling good, and with something like a product, it's about looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a balance that you kind of have to have between those two? What?
I think so. I think there is a balance. I think it's so easy to get caught up in what we physically look like. I do think, however, when we kind of shine on the inside and we're fulfilled and we fill ourselves up with love on the inside, I think that spills out into our outside and what we look like and how people perceive us and how we perceive ourselves. Because I know when I started my meditations and my spiritual journey, really practicing self-love, which I had heard so much, it was kind of oversaturated, I believe, and society, just people use it and throw it around, but don't really know or feel the meaning of it. And when I started really doing self-love meditation, self-love practice on my own, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so much room for me to hug myself that I didn't realize was there. And I think in that space, I began to give up a lot of what I physically look like, or caring as much about what I physically look like, because I knew that as long as I perceived myself in the light of love internally, that would shine through. And I think it really created a really beautiful balance for me, at least, because that was always something that I struggled with, was what I physically look like, and worrying about it, or just so many things. And I think when I started filling my own tank up inside, external was kind of just like, it was like icing on the cake. If I, felt good about myself inside, I just felt like I always looked good anyways. So.
Wow. Bradley here. Bradley, everyone. That's amazing. It's amazing, and it really does show. It really does show your brand, everything. As soon as we met, I was like, what does this guy do? And it ended up being a lovely congruency between who you are and your business, and I love what it stands for.
Thank you.
So seriously,
I appreciate that.
You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
And to work, for everyone that's looking, because it seems like you shared with me earlier today that you make your products yourself.
I do. I make the majority of my products myself. I have 2 all-natural products, one of which it's a pomegranate oil, and I collaborated with a local artisan to create that. And then my balm I have an all-natural manufacturer in San Diego, but all of my other products in my line, I designed, created, I produce, I manufacture, I do everything by hand. It's a really beautiful meditative practice for me, because in my opinion, these products are going into people's most sacred spaces. They're either going on their body or they're going in their home. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just creating a product. I wanted the products to for sure be clean, and they're mostly organic. So that was important for it to be really nature inspired. That was important for me, but it was also important for me to show up with intention with those products, to make sure that I wasn't just creating something that was already on the market. And there are a lot of my products already on the market, but I think what separates the two, or what separates it, is that I do make them by hand. It is something that I make sure that I cleanse my space. I make sure that I meditate prior before I go into production. I bless my products. When I make candles, I actually speak love into my candles so that they form around the vibration of love, because I feel like when people burn the candles and release them, they're burning all that loving energy that I've infused into the candles into their home, which then spills over into their life, and then they go out into the world and kind of create waves in their community. So it's important for me to make sure that I'm doing everything intentionally, and I just love having my hands in it. It's just, there's nothing like seeing something from a visual standpoint of, the idea comes to me, the process, I kind of do my research on where to get certain things and how I want it to be, and then I sketch everything out, fast forward to the final product and putting the label on, and it's there. It's like the most rewarding thing next to someone receiving the product in the way that I created it. I think that's probably the most rewarding thing of it all, is just the feedback that I have gotten on how it's touched people, or they felt it, or it's moved people, or they come back and I do sessions with them, and it's just, I'm really just kind of flowing and creating as I go, but I'm very thankful to be here. Very thankful.
Amazing. And obviously you make your products for everyone that can benefit from it, but who normally is your audience? Like, what are you focusing on?
I think everyone, if I had to say focus, I would say right now, my audience right now is females. It really is, just from a buying standpoint. That is my audience. My audience in my own mind is to touch as many people as I possibly can. So where I am now is where I am now. Where I am 2 months from now is where I'll be then. And I'm just always trusting in the evolution of my brand, and just hopeful that I'm touching people along the way, no matter what. But even when I started off with beard products, which was obviously a product for guys, my clientele was still women. It was the girlfriends that were buying. It was the wife that was buying. It was people on Instagram that I knew that had just been following me for so long, and they were female, and they wanted to buy it for their dad or their boyfriends, or their brother. It wasn't the guys necessarily buying the products. A lot of the guys would come back and buy the products afterwards, but most of my clientele was women. And then I had a aha moment of like, for some reason in the very beginning, I wasn't really able to translate or tap into this like ultra masculine beard world. It wasn't my world, and I think I created a product that didn't necessarily speak to it, but was available in terms of what it could do for their beards or their skin. But I started to see that like my clientele was female, and I was like, I really would love the creative freedom to, instead of boxing myself into trying to be masculine, whatever that means, or creating products for guys, I just wanted to create products for everyone. And when I had that moment of really just acceptance in myself and allowing me to do that with my business, it just kind of opened, and it flowed from there. And when I created the candle, that was my next thing. It was really like, I'm just going to make a couple of candles. I'll see how they do. And the response was really fantastic. And it just kind of went from there.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That it's the women that's buying it for husband, boyfriend, family members. That's so interesting. And you can only really figure that out once you put it out there.
Exactly.
That's why like it's so hard for people when they're starting their business to plan it all out. Because at first you're starting, you have an idea and you have a dream, But I don't know if you can agree with this, but things change.
Things change.
As you're doing things, as you're executing, you realize that new information, new data usually has to mean new things that you have to do, right? Taking a new path. You mentioned something earlier where you're talking that you started with the beard products, but then you kind of stepped back and allowed to see the bigger picture and focus on other things.
For sure.
How do you explain that to somebody that's just starting out and they're telling them only focus on one thing and master that, and then you can focus on other things? Like, how does new data usually mean new behaviors?
I think, it is something to really master, in a sense of just kind of listening to your internal guidance system. I love the word you said, allow. I tell myself that all the time because it really is always getting ourselves into a place of allowing the universe to kind of deliver to us. I think for me, starting my business, I'm such a different person now, and that's less than a year just as an entrepreneur, because in the beginning it was a dream, it was a vision, it was a hope, that it would be successful. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had never launched a business. I had always worked in either assistant jobs. I had always helped other people on projects to make them successful, but never myself. So I was always in a place of taking direction from people more so than being the direction myself. And I think in the beginning, my business partner, thankfully, is, he's had businesses. So business wise, I felt very confident in that space. But in terms of creative and allowing the business to flow in a direction of my products and trusting the direction that I went, it really was just going day to day and trusting no matter what the day entailed, no matter how hard it was or how stressful it was, to trust always that my vision would my feeling for my vision would always come about. So we're kind of letting go of the nitty gritty details and looking at the overall picture, so to speak. So, I guess, for example, I had this envision when I started my brand was to empower guys, because I wanted to, it was coming from an internal place of like wanting to empower myself to be free to do whatever I wanted to do, whether it was masculine or feminine, more so just being my me. But it was really letting go of that and saying, like, it's not about staying just here. It's about looking at this broader perspective of what do I want to do with my brand? It was not always the product, it was more so touching people's lives. It was always about empowering people, it was always about making waves in the community and in the world. So for me, as long as that vision was upheld, as long as I stayed true to that, everything else would fall into place. So there were days where I was super stressed and scared and nervous, and like, every order that I made for the brand, every decision that I made felt so heavy, and it felt so like, oh, like this is, do or die, so to speak. But, now where I am, it doesn't feel that way at all. I'm so much more relaxed. I guess what I'm trying to say is relax into your business and relax into you just making the right decisions always. And even if it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a right decision, so to speak, immediately, it could lead you to a better decision or a better path that you necessarily didn't know. So I think it's always welcoming that, when something didn't work, you're like, oh man, that didn't work. But it's like, but something greater could come from this. So I'm going to table that and I'm going to let it come back to me. And it always comes back, or it comes back in a different way. It's fun to kind of trace those steps back and say, like, oh, wow, okay, this actually came from this way over here, which I didn't think worked. So, yeah, I think relaxing into and trusting that if you have an idea and you have something that you want to do, go for it and just believe in it fully. And the more you believe in it, the more the universe will kind of yield to you those beliefs. It will kind of match you in that space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I can relate to that definitely. So thank you. I know that there are times where we think that the worst case scenario is never gonna happen, or it should not happen. And usually when it happens, you kind of realize that it's not that bad.
Right.
You know, you're like, oh, like just recently I lost one of my biggest clients because they were, I think they went bankrupt, or they needed to allocate money somewhere else. And when I first started, I'm like, wow, I've got this client, there's no way. And you know, things happen.
Right.
Things happen, but I was always so scared. And when they told me that they needed to put a pause on the services that I offer, it was just like I felt for them. And it wasn't about me.
Oh, good.
And weirdly enough, 2 days later, I ended up getting another client that pays me even more.
Wow.
And it's almost like it needed to make that space for this new client to just come into my experience.
Always.
So it's so interesting, and thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. So you talk about the big dream, the big goal, having that in place, and then allowing everything else to flow. Where do you see the Undercover Brand? What's that big, hairy, audacious goal that's just there?
Everywhere. I just want to be everywhere. I'm still working on that huge, big goal, or defining that, I should say. I have a broad scope of it and wanting to be, international. I want my products everywhere. I want my e-commerce store to be huge and super successful financially, because it's not all about the finances for me, but really the more homes that I'm in, the more bodies that I've touched, the more products that are in hand of people, the more people's lives that I've touched, the more conversation that I've created around what I'm doing, and this conscious space that I'm creating within my brand. So I'm still defining, and I think that that's okay. I love the freedom and flexibility of saying, like, when I launch skincare, I want my skincare to be in Sephora. That's a huge thing for me. I can't wait for my products to be in, like, the clean beauty section of Sephora. That's huge. But I don't have like this overall big, it's got to be in this store, this store, this store. I need this amount of sales. I need this amount of volume, blah, 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 these amount of products. I'm still learning that along the way. But my greater picture of all of this is to just touch as many people's lives as I can. And I trust that will happen. And if on Monday it's one person and Thursday it's 5 people, I know that those 6 people have went out into their own world separate from me and made a difference and made a little bit of a lighter day for someone else. So I can already feel the space in which Undercover will occupy in this universe, and that feels really, really good. I'm just kind of waiting for the physical to catch up to where it vibrationally is.
Got
If
it.
that makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I absolutely agree. So I'm going to end this with one final question.
Okay.
Bradley, you started this May last year.
Yes.
Right? But you've had this idea and this dream a few years behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could have a conversation with Bradley in May that was maybe a little frightening about or scared about what was going to happen, what would you tell him?
I would say you got this. I would say to trust in yourself fully, to just stay true to you, to listen to your voice, your vision, to speak up for yourself. When someone tells you it should be done the other way, check in with you first. Don't just respond to everything that everyone says, because everyone has an opinion. I definitely learned that. But really just to go for it and to just not hold back and to just give all of you and to unlayer yourself into a place where you feel vulnerable enough to give even more than you've ever given, and in a place that you didn't even know was there, and to just believe in yourself, because no matter what, it is going to work out, and it's going to be bigger and better than you ever imagined, and you're doing it. You're going to do it. You're there.
I love it. I love it, Bradley. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. I love everything that just happened here. You just inspired me and everybody that's going to watch this.
Thank you.
Where do they find you?
So you can check my products out at theundercoverbrand.com. That's where my store is. I have a couple retail shops. My candles here in West Hollywood and Candle Delirium, which is a huge candle shop. I'm so happy for that. But you can check me out at theundercoverbrand.com.
All right, Instagrams?
Instagram is The Undercover Brand. My personal Instagram is Bradley Ryan with an underscore at the end.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing, and I'm so happy to share and connect with you and your viewers.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bradley.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Later, everyone.
See you guys.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. That was fun.
Yes, that was.